How do we equip our families with a biblical worldview? How do we prepare the next generation for life? How do I grow in my walk with the Lord and in my marriage? If you wrestle with these questions, you are in the right place to find answers. Welcome to the Entrusting the Faith podcast. Welcome to the Entrusting the Faith podcast. I'm your host, Eric Rutherford, and I'm excited today because I have with me Molly DeFrank. She is the founder of the online digital Detox, where she helps free families from their addictions to devices. She is the author of a fabulous book, which is called Digital Detox, the 2-week tech reset for kids. She is a stay-at-home mom and foster mom to 6 kids, ages 12 and under. 2 quick items before we get to our interview. First, if you go to our website at entrustingthefaith.com, scroll down to the bottom, sign up for our weekly emails so you know who is coming up on the podcast for the week and who you may have missed the previous week. You'll also get a free resource when you do, and you can find all our other podcasts on our website while you're there. Feel free to scroll through them, find other interviews to really help you along the way. Second, this episode is just brought to you by my book, Leading While at Home, How Husbands and Fathers Can Biblically Lead Their Families. So if you've ever thought, man, I want to be a godly husband or father, I don't know where to start, or you've heard that you need to do something to equip your family, but you just don't know where to begin, well, if this is you or anybody you know, Leading Well at Home will show you how you can love Jesus Christ, love and serve your wife and children, and take responsibility for discipling your family. You'll be encouraged and given action steps that you can apply so that you're moving forward. Okay, now let's jump into today's episode. So Molly, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Eric.
Oh, it is my pleasure. Now, before we get into the book, Digital Detox, would you share a little bit with our audience just about your background and kind of what got you there?
Yeah. Well, born and raised in Southern California, and I went to school up in Northern California and then got married right quick after college and worked in Sacramento, which was wonderful. And then I quit my job when I had 2 kids, and have been a stay-at-home mom ever since. And, we were kind of early adopters of the more tech is better for our kids initially in parenting. But a lot has changed over the decades. And we noticed that the iPad came out in 2011 and we loved it. It felt like a great opportunity to keep our kids occupied, keep them busy. We thought it was educational. But as time went on, we started seeing these red flags behaviorally, attentionally. And it was kind of like one of those things where as a parent, you're like, something's off, something's not right. But life gets busy and you move along the day and take care of your business. And until one day, and now at this point, we had 5 kids. This was 3 years ago. And I had just had enough. And one of my kids greeted me at the door with, "Can I play on your phone?" It wasn't, "Hi, mommy." It was, "Can I play on your phone?" Like I was this gatekeeper of their devices. And so for me, that was it. I called my husband at work and I said, "Hey, I think we need to pull the plug. I think we need to take a break. I'm over this." And he said, "I am all in. You're going to bear most of the brunt of this since you're home with the kids. So when you're ready, I'm ready. That sounds great." So we told the kids at dinner that night, and they were not happy about it. They weren't. But what we found was that within a day, they started using their imaginations. They started playing with the toys on their shelves because they knew it wasn't an option. We had told them lovingly, gently, this is not a punishment. It's just something we're trying. No digital entertainment, none. And it was like we had flipped a switch. We got them back. It was wonderful.
Wow. That is, I think that's a common story. I think of families, but the way you handled it is very different. So tell us about the book, Digital Detox. How did that come about? Was it just from that experience?
Well, so I had shared a little bit about this on social media and just a picture of all my kids reading because I couldn't believe it. I would literally just happen upon them reading. And I had one, my oldest has always been kind of a bookworm. But, I mistakenly assumed that, some kids like to read for pleasure and some just don't. Some just aren't readers. well, it wasn't until our detox that I realized, oh no, they just, once you remove this passive numbing out style of entertainment, once you take it off the table, they will read books. Some kids do require a little more work than others to get them interested in reading, but I talk about that in the book too. But I had shared a picture online of all of my kids one morning during our detox or shortly after. They just, a Saturday morning, they all climbed into bed with us, and they saw me and my husband were reading our own books, and they climbed in with their own book. And so my husband had gotten out of bed. I'm like, you need to get a picture of this. This is ridiculous. And so he took a picture and I put it online, and it went a little, I'm like, man, I guess people want to know. People started asking me all these questions. Like, how'd you do this? Did you stage this? No, I didn't stage this photo. How come they're all interested in this? And I realized I was kind of hitting on something that, looking back, absolutely, it's unusual. And frankly, it's not really, I mean, there's absolutely an element of responsibility in there, but we've had access to this technology for our kids that has been marketed to us as educational and helpful and stuff that they need in order to get ahead in life, in order to be equipped with the skills they need to be engineers and all of these things. And so we bought into marketing for a long time. And now I believe the tide is turning, because parents are taking a second look and they're saying, gosh, this has been actually bringing the worst out in my kids and their behavior. They're fighting more than ever. This is not what we train our kids around the dinner table. This is not what we talk about in the car. And yet they're disconnected, and everything's like hyped up in terms of their moods and attitudes and what's going on. And that's one of the things that the parents that I help that reach out to me the most are really good parents of really great kids. And they're already monitoring screen time. They're already setting limits. They're setting timers, and it's not working. They're still seeing these negative effects. And that's why the detox is such a great resource and such a huge help for parents, because it gives them a clean slate for their kids. And there's actually science behind it. But yeah, it changed our lives. And I've been helping parents online do the same thing. They report similar results. And that's why I wrote this book. I took all of the help, everything we did in our home, and all of the help I've been given parents that I meet online that reach out to me, and I put it into this book. And now it's a guide for anyone who wants to go through this.
Oh, that's awesome. For everybody listening, definitely this is a fantastic source to really think through this. And it sounds like it has a lot of good action steps for everybody who wants to check it out. So what makes this book unique? Because I know there are different sources out there about dealing with technology and children, or just adults too, right? I mean, it's not simply kids, it's adults as well. What makes this one unique, or how do you position that?
Yeah, great question. And, I kind of dove headfirst into this thing when we detoxed them. So I didn't read any of the books. That's why I wrote this one. It's the book I wish we had when we started. But in the course of writing it, I did all of this research and I read stacks of books. And what I found was there are a lot of books talking about the problem. And you read these stacks of books from all different perspectives: neurologists, psychiatrists, speech therapists will tell you it's a problem. All kinds of doctors, pastors will tell you. People talk about this in the church, outside of the church. And sometimes they would have a little sentence like, oh, here's a good way to fix it. You could take a break. But the books are so heavily problem based, so heavily research based, which is good. It's good information for us to have. But for parents in the trenches, if they've got someone in a lab coat telling them, oh, you shouldn't, give your kids too much screen time, it's like, okay, I'm sure that sounds great to you sitting in your office, but here I am on the front lines trying to put away the laundry, trying to have a conversation on the phone with the doctor, whatever you're trying to get done. And so this book is a practical, hands-on parent's guide, how to get through those 2 weeks. The first half is how to do the 2-week detox. And then the second half is how to sustain those results for the long term, how to create a long-term plan uniquely tailored to your children. Because let's face it, parents are divinely ordained to be the experts on their kids and to train up our kids in the way they should go, according to their own bent, according to what God's word says and how they're uniquely wired. So I love coming alongside parents to help give them practical help, but also there is peppered in there like a lot of data to remind parents of like, this is the why behind why it's a problem and also why it works. But yes, it's the book I wish I had when we started.
I love that. I love that it's practical, like, and it's the book that you wish you would have had. So that sounds like it's laid out well. And I like how you talked about it's not focused on the problem. It talks about the problem, but really it's solution driven on how do you actually implement it, with the data too, because that's good to include. But like you say, if the only thing you hear is the problem, it's like that doesn't help.
Exactly. I mean, there's so many, living in a broken world, there are so many problems. It's like if we read all about them all the time, we'll just feel bogged down. But that's why this message is so important to me, because I've seen it work. I've seen it transform my family and the culture of our home, and also other families coming back to me saying, I cannot believe how quickly this works. And, the real hero in this story is parents and their kids, because they're the ones doing the heavy lifting. They're the ones making the hard decision. This is countercultural to decide to pull back, to take a break. And they're the ones that are dealing with that, but they're also the ones who are reaping the benefits of this new connection with your kids, getting to know your kids like never before, both the good and the bad. I thought before our detox, my three oldest kids, their favorite hobbies, they would each name a different video game. And I just thought, oh, that's just how kids play. Well, it doesn't have to be. Ever since then, they have honed these new hobbies: cooking, baseball, football. The world is their oyster, and there's so many things for them to explore. But the problem is that our kids are numbing out on their devices, and it is preventing them from practicing these wonderful God-given talents and skills that they have. And so when you take it all off the table, what you're actually doing is you're giving your kids a dopamine fast, because the devices are purposefully engineered to release excessive amounts of dopamine in the human brain. So, dopamine is that neurotransmitter, that feel-good chemical. It's released anytime we experience something pleasurable, going for a walk or, hugging your spouse or whatever. Well, they've taken what we know about the human brain and they've baked these dopamine release points into our devices, and the devices we're handing over to our kids. So much dopamine is getting released that the receptors are numbing out, they're dying. So it's like any addictive pull, that now more dopamine is required to experience the same level of enjoyment. And how can real life compete with that level of dopamine release? It can't. So that's why kids complain of boredom. When you're saying, come on, this is fun, let's go shoot some hoops. No, that's boring, mom. Well, it is boring scientifically in their brain, because that level of dopamine isn't being measured. So there's science behind it. So in that sense, it's not really our kids' fault when you think they're throwing a fit after the screen timer dings. You're watching a dopamine crash in real time. So our kids really need us to roll up our sleeves and get in there and do the hard thing. But then on the other side of that, and this is what I love to tell parents, on the other side of that, you will find this connection with your kids that is you haven't seen before.
I love that. And I love that description, how it is a dopamine crash when that is taken away. It's that there is some physiology behind sort of the behavior and the response. I mean, still responsible for the response, as human beings, we're responsible for, our actions and how we do that. But yet there is that chemical physiology behind it. So it's like an aha moment. It's like, oh, now I understand. And the same way with shooting basketball, it's like, okay, it's not the same dopamine hit, so to speak. And so it's like, okay, that logically that makes sense. So I love that description.
Yeah, exactly. And it's huge. There's so much science supporting this dopamine fast. In fact, the more I read about it, there are a couple articles out about these Silicon Valley engineers who create the technology, they do these, they call them dopamine fasts all the time because they know what the technology does. They want the reset also. Another interesting thing is that some of the strictest parents when it comes to screen time for their own kids are the people who create it. I think the Snapchat co-creator, I read in an article, he and his wife limit their 8-year-old to an hour and a half a week of screen time because he grew up without it. And so we have for too long, we've been buying into this marketing. They market these products as things our kids need. And yet you look at their quotes. I think one of the Google co-founders said, well, we make this stuff as brain dead, easy to use as possible. That's why anyone can figure these things out. That's not what kids need. What kids need is back and forth conversation. They need to learn how to negotiate their boredom. They need to learn problem solving skills. So a lot of these tech giants, again, they're sending their kids to screen-free schools because they want them to develop those thinking skills before they go out to create.
Wow. That is, I don't know, that I say fascinating, troubling. It's one of those, it's a weird balance because on the one hand, you see, they see firsthand, it's like, I don't want my kids doing this. And yet at the same time, they're producing things that, for everybody else. So it's weird, it's very weird. Now, in the first section of the book, you talk about undoing that tech trance, right? And so any one suggestion for people listening who are like, if I need to apply something today, like any suggestion that you have for them?
Yes. So I recommend when I say undo the tech trance, I want that to be really easy to remember for parents. And I break this up. And basically, there's 4 things that every successful detox has in common. So undo is how you remember that. You unplug cold turkey 2 weeks. N is notice your kids like never before. You're noticing their giftings, their interests, their talents, and also the places that could use a little improvement. If they can't negotiate their own boredom, help them there. If they can't handle back and forth conversation with the cashier, you are the person that's in charge of teaching them those things. So you're really amping up those parental powers of noticing. And then D is develop a list of screen-free fun ideas for your kids. You'll sit down, and I have resources on my website. You can print these out when you buy the book. But you sit down with your kids and they're probably going to be a little grumbly about it because you just took away their screen time or you just announced it. But you say, well, let's think about this. What other options are there? And what as mom and dad is there are a million. There's no limit to the number of options because the issue is not the lack of available options. It's the lack of interest in the options. And so what you're doing when you're creating this list is you're walking your kids through the exercise of brainstorming, using what God gave them in there to come up with ideas. Well, what would I do if I had free time and screen was off the table? And now they're thinking, you're showing them that they have what they need to negotiate their own boredom. So, and then, you can stick that list on the fridge. And when the kids in the middle of the detox will complain about boredom, you can say, well, here's this list that we made. You can consult that, or you can find something new, or I have a lot of laundry that needs putting away. So if you are that bored, you're welcome to do that. So these are all tricks. These are all in the book and more. And then for undo, the 4th thing is open the books. And I was a skeptic about this. I mentioned this earlier when we were chatting, but you can absolutely play book matchmaker with your kids, even the reading reluctant kids. I've seen this with my own children who have been reading reluctant. We've been able to, it's just a matter of finding the right genre for them. And one of my kids, I fully doubted that this kid would get hooked. And it took several trips to the library. It took several failed attempts at trying to, I'm like, well, I don't know. He likes chicken nuggets. This is a book series literally about chicken nuggets. I bought it, not into it. So I kept trying and trying. And I realized he actually likes nonfiction. He likes those fact books. And, okay, good to know. It's just find what your kid is into, get them books on that. It's a perfect time to awaken that love of books and reading, because that really is the gateway for everything else in life is reading and thinking. And yeah, at the end of that, So that's basically the first half of the book is getting parents through all of those things specifically and practically. And then later it's the long-term plan.
And that makes, so that sounds like planning is critical to both halves of the situation, right? Both with the detox, you have some plan. It's not you're just winging it. You're going through, and it's a methodical process that you've sketched out and laid out for parents. And then the same thing with the after the detox. It sounds like planning is critical to that. Is that true?
Absolutely. And I do recommend parents read the first half of the book before they start the detox, just because it'll really equip you for any of these possibilities and hopefully keep you motivated because you know the data, you know the science behind it, you know the why, and that it matters. The stakes are really high. But also exactly what you said, that plan is there for parents.
And so, I'm thinking about different age groups of kids and everything else that's going on with them. And sometimes they have to deal with technology, whether it's with school, whether it's with work, whether it's whatever. So, that's for better or for worse, that's kind of the world we're living in. How can we help our kids with those responsibilities that are tech related or virtually done? I'll throw out, even whether it's after the detox or depending on what the detox is and when it is. I mean, that's possible. I think, at least, or maybe we need to plan around that. I don't know. I'm just going to kind of lob that one out there for you and get your response.
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, I do have a chapter in the second half of the book called, I think, Technology and Education. So it kind of helps parents parse that out. And I'll share a specific example that we dealt with. When we did our detox, I was homeschooling two of my kids, and they did their math curriculum online. So I let them do their math during our detox. So the way I broke it down is technology that is used in the classroom or for school as an assignment. We allowed that during the detox. But it can be a slippery slope. Don't let your kids tell you, well, this is an educational app that I want to play for fun. No, none of that. So it was an assignment required by school. And then I do recommend too that parents, after your detox, you're going to learn so much about your kids. You are going to be blown away by the results, and you're going to think, gosh, the next question you're going to ask is, what about the classroom? And if your school isn't in touch with this, you're going to probably want to change some things, which I think is great. But I do encourage parents to do the detox, figure out their own stuff at home, and then maybe share that with the teachers or educators there. And I actually have resources for schools. So if schools are interested in doing this as like a school-wide challenge, they can, or nonprofits or groups, they can get the book in discount on my website. But what was I just talking about? Oh yeah, tech for school. Yeah, it's so deeply integrated in our work life, in our school life. And so what we're really going for here is a posture towards technology. We are trying to develop this digital wisdom, just like parents are called to, train our kids up in wisdom and knowledge. We want to train our kids to be digitally wise as they go out into this world that they're going to live in. So that's something that we're kind of always going to be working through. But I think what a better start than with the detox and then this newfound clarity and this long-term plan moving forward. So the main thing we do with our own long-term plan is we use technology to connect with each other and to create. That's mostly how we use it. We love family movie nights, once in a while. We keep our computer or desktop in the kitchen. The kids will hop on and make a little PowerPoint slide, or they'll write a story for fun or whatever. And that's great. That's a great use of technology, in my opinion. But when it comes to isolating and consuming, we don't really do that as much because we see the effects on mental health. We see the effects on relationships. So kind of trying to give our kids an idea for the posture that we have towards technology, what its purpose is in our lives. We don't want to check out of the world. We want to still live in the world. And when we're kind of pulled away from that, we're not available to use our gifts and our eyes to see people who need us and who maybe we were put in their lives to minister to them, a sibling or whoever, a friend. So yeah, and the book, from the beginning to the end, it really does help parents kind of go big picture with this. I don't just want to leave parents. So it's not so limited to just the tablet. It's like, okay, let's just take a minute. We're all very busy. And sometimes we're just rushing to get through the day. So you hand the tablet, you hand over the phone, whatever you got to do to keep the kid occupied. But do we want to do that for 18 years? Do we want to do that for our kids? They go out into the world and we're going to give an account for what we did in terms of formation of their worldview and really pouring into them. And so it takes a special parent to say, okay, I'm not into the status quo. It's not working. And I'm ready to try something new. And those are the parents I work with, and I love helping them.
I like that. Yeah, it's really taking responsibility, understanding what our role is really as parents, and then wanting to equip our kids in the best way possible based on what Scripture says, knowing that we're given account. I like that. And I like how you talk too about thinking of technology in terms of creativity and connecting, to using it in those types of means, that it's almost like as a tool to do something versus just a checking out. It seems like a really good measuring stick for technology.
Absolutely. And that's the goal here is, technology has seeped into our lives slowly, and then kind of, another device, another hour of screen time, another app. And we're feeling like all of those minutes, all of those time, that the Bible talks about in Deuteronomy 6, it says, teach these things to your kids. Talk about, God is telling parents, this is my own paraphrase, obviously, talk about me to your kids as you're going along the road and you're lying down and you're getting up, like talk about God to your kids. And those moments today, we live in a world where those moments have been completely spoken for. They are occupied by a device in someone's face. So, we really just want to take that time out, get that big picture view, and then make a new plan. And I wrote this guide. It's a shame-free guide for parents who are like, we just want to go in there, have a clean slate, start over, especially in the wake of COVID and all these lockdowns and over reliance on screens. People are like, they are just ready to take a break. So, yeah.
No, and I appreciate that. And so, as just kind of under that same umbrella, when you think about things like audiobooks, when you think about things like podcasts, even television, and I feel so old because I've actually watched television that wasn't streaming, and so they're technically technology, right? It's not. They have a technology component in there. So do we draw the line with those? Do we say, oh, it's tech, we can't use those? Or how do we draw some specific lines with technology? Or is it a little fluid depending on the situation?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, technically, as you're talking, I'm thinking about other forms of technology. And I'm like, well, hey, washing machines too. I'm not going to get my wash part out. So,
nope, we're not getting rid of that one.
Not going that way. Not going that far. So, and different families will probably fall in different places on this. But for the purposes of the detox, I tried to make it as practical and doable as possible. So yes, electricity, we're still using our hair dryers. We're still using these things, but you're right to parse out television and gaming have a different impact on kids. And that's something I learned in researching the book. Interactive screen time affects the brain differently. Like, so gaming, social media games where they're tapping, they affect the brain differently than passively watching television. So you're right. There is a difference. Where I drew the line, and probably different people could argue different things, is we did no screen entertainment. We did allow audiobooks. We love audiobooks in the car. We find those we get them at the library all the time. They're really connective, especially when I pick the kids up from school. If I bring a snack and pop in that audiobook, everyone is cool and calm and it is a great ride home. So yeah, that's kind of it. We took away everything that we had noticed was not life-giving, that it was life zapping. So that's kind of what my washing machine is also very life-giving to me. But yes,
Absolutely.
audiobooks, all those things. And for the long-term plan, most families don't want to eliminate all technology forever. They just want to put it in its right place, because too much over this span of time, it's gotten out of whack. So this allows parents to kind of, when that old, I remember my mom teaching me how to clean out a closet when I was a kid. And she said, you take everything out. You don't take one thing at a time out. You take it all out. And then you only put the things back that serve you. And so this is kind of like that.
No, and I appreciate the distinction. And I like that life-giving idea. And like my son, he sort of likes to read, but he's kind of like, he likes history books. He likes other things like that, but he really likes listening to books. Or, each night we'll sit together right before bed, and I'll read something to him, a couple of chapters of something. And so it's that auditory reception of the book. And so I like how you describe that. And the science backs up too, is that is very different than an interactive screen. And so I think sometimes we can get confused with that. It's like, is an audiobook bad? Is a podcast bad? What's that like? So I appreciate that clarification, sort of that the distinction there. So how do we deal with safety and screen times? Because there we have an enemy, and it is not the screen, but man, he certainly influences a lot of things that go into the screens. And so there's a lot of danger. When our families interact with screens and internet and other things, how can we protect them? And that includes me as a husband and father, as my wife. How can we sort of protect all of us, but especially our kids?
That's a huge question, Eric, because parents are the new rating system. When I was growing up, it was, whatever was on TV. And if you don't subscribe to those, explicit channels, then you'd never see anything like that. Well, we are in a completely different world. Not only have the rating systems changed, but now you hand your kid any device that connects to the internet. So it's not just smartphones. If you give your kid a tablet that connects to Wi-Fi, if your kid has a computer in their room, they now have access to the entire world. And I'm sure your listeners have heard lots of horror stories about that. You're basically just opening up all of these channels for whatever is out there to now be in front of your child's face. So keeping our kids safe is huge. It's a huge job for parents today. And that's why I think the key is waiting longer, starting later to give your kids that access. So the trend for a long time was to give your kids a smartphone as young as possible. I remember my kids at their school, there'd be 7, 8, 9-year-olds walking around with smartphones. I believe that tide is turning, because we've watched a generation of kids, their mental health really suffering. We've heard the horror stories, and I think parents are kind of not wanting to repeat that. But there are a lot of great resources out there. My oldest has a Gab phone, which is not a smartphone. It is a dumb phone. It has no internet access. It has no app store. So it is just a phone. And it's great because we can talk with her if she needs to get picked up from practice. We have a way to get a hold of her we found that to be a great resource. But again, when you wait longer, you're giving your kids more time to develop that wisdom and discernment and worldview that you're trying to impart, before you're handing them the key to everything in the entire world, the key to, having these conversations with strangers who are posing as kids. You hear about these stories all the time. They're really unsettling and upsetting. But that's where parent-child relationship is. Nothing can compete with that. So just amp that up and to turn that up for your kids. And, you want to be that kind of parent that they'll tell all of their stuff to. And so it's important that we're, both monitoring, keeping them safe, and then starting later. That's what I recommend, for giving them access later. And the hope would be, and take it child by child, but the hope would be that before they fly the coop and leave the home, that they will have had access. We don't want our kids to go out there totally unequipped to handle a computer with internet access, So as they're older, giving them that freedom and access that they're going to have once they're 18 and off at college, so that they can make those mistakes or be exposed to those things under your roof and then bring it to you and process it. So this isn't like a never let them see anything, never let them have access to the real world kind of a mindset. It's just let's wait a little longer and instill more of that worldview, virtue, discernment in them, so that they can make those great decisions.
And I appreciate that. And it's that idea of getting them to the point where they can, that being able to handle and be responsible for the technology and what's going on. I think of it like, it just came to mind, like my oldest is getting ready to get her license. So she's getting ready to drive, and she's 16. We've done a year's worth of, permit. And so we've done all the practice. Now she's ready. Mentally, she's got the skills to be able to drive. My youngest, my son, he's 11, and I know he wants to drive, but he is definitely not there. And so I appreciate that distinction. And one more question is, that introduction of technology, and you were talking about waiting longer before, we introduce our kids to technology like that. Do you have a suggestion or recommendation for like age for that? When is too early and when is appropriate? And it's okay if it's like one of those gray answers, but but you may have a solid answer. So I just wanted to throw that and kind of get your input.
Yeah. I think it's going to be kid by kid, but I will say that these apps, like social media apps, the terms of service say you're not allowed to be on it if you're under 13. So, starting there, we don't want to sign off for our kids showing them the rules don't apply to them. So definitely not before then. And then there's really interesting data on how social media impacts kids. And it's a researcher out of San Diego State. She wrote a book called iGen. And she looked at just in terms of kids' development, and as they're going through adolescence, there is a point at which I think it was like the middle of high school when social media doesn't have as much of an impact on their mental health. It's closer to like how it affects adults, which of course it can in negative ways, but it can be so positive too. Social media can be a wonderful tool. It can also be difficult depending on the person. But once kids reach that like middle high school mark, it's not as detrimental to them as if they're on social media earlier and before they've done that inner work of like, who am I and what's my place in this world? And, we've let these kids go online. We've given them access to this before they've done that work, before they've really felt secure in who they are and being fully known and fully loved. And now we've put them in this impossible situation where they're facing outward, like posturing to try and create a persona. And it's just, it's such shaky ground to be on. It's like building a house on sand for our kids. Mm-hmm. It's just putting them in a hard position. So anyway, I wouldn't give an exact number right now, and my oldest biological kid, we've had teenagers in and out of our home through foster care, but I've seen up close how it can negatively impact kids when they have too much. So, but yeah, for our oldest daughter right now, I'm working with not before a driver's license. I think I would trust her and she's an incredible kid. But in terms of what I want to hand over to her and what I want to give her mental load, I'm thinking drive-in before social media, before a smartphone.
No, and that makes sense. And that's a good age, good time to be thinking on that. And I agree, life is hard enough as an adult wrestling with some of those things, let alone as as a teenager or, preteen or any of those where everything is so crazy internally. So I like that distinction. And then just kind of, because I'm looking at the clock and this has been a fun conversation as we wrap up. Any one takeaway you want to leave the audience, like a piece of encouragement, a challenge, anything like that you would like to leave them with?
Yeah, I really want to encourage parents that if you feel like technology has taken too big of a role in your home and in the culture of your home, you can absolutely reverse that. And it's so simple. And notice I didn't say easy necessarily, but while it might not be easy, your results will make it absolutely worth it. The detox repays dividends. I promise you that. And I wrote this book. It's Digital Detox, the 2-week tech reset for kids. It is so practical. It's a practical, shame-free guide to get you from your status quo to where you want to be. And as parents, you have been divinely ordained to shepherd your kids through this exact time in history, through this exact time in technology. So you have what you need and you can absolutely do it. I just want to give you the hope and encouragement that you can do this.
Excellent. And I appreciate that not only for the audience, for me as well, just sort of soaking that in and remembering that. Because it is, and I think as a culture, and we a lot of times we don't feel like we are enough, or that we can handle this. And the Lord, like you say, the Lord equips us to do this.
Yes.
And so we need to rest in that knowledge and in His grace. So if people want to know more about you, want to find out about your program, your book, where would you like them to go?
Yeah, you can come to my website, mollydefrank.com. The book Digital Detox is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, pretty much wherever books are sold, Target, you can get it anywhere. So yeah, but check out my website. I'd love to hear from you. If you detox your kids, let me know. I'd love to hear how it goes.
Excellent. So if you're listening, we'll put that information in the show notes, both the website, the book link. You'll be able to check everything out. Definitely get the book and just get equipped, right? And just to be able to sort of take back our kids and in the way that God has called us to do. So Molly, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been a great conversation. I've enjoyed it, and I know our audience will benefit from it tremendously.
Thanks so much, Eric. Thanks for having me.
If you found this episode helpful, please leave a review for us wherever you listen to podcasts. Doing so will help others to find us. Check out the show notes for resource information. We encourage you to do that for links and other references. We'd like to hear from you, so you can message us your questions or comments on Facebook, Instagram, at Entrusting the Faith. You can email us at info@entrustingthefaith.com. If you go to our website, which is www.entrustingthefaith.com, you can sign up to our email list and receive free resources as well as upcoming podcast episode information. So check it out. Lastly, just remember, legacies are built a day at a time. So start now.